Hey YouTube, this is Will, and welcome to Superhero Sunday here on the Movie Files. Now, this is part 2 of a two-part Superhero Sunday Trek Tuesday crossover that I started on Trek Tuesday. You can go and look for part 1. This is the second Star Trek X-Men crossover. This was Star Trek: The Next Generation X-Men Second Contact. Now, this is a sequel to the first Star Trek X-Men crossover, obviously, but it's also a sort of quasi-sequel to the film Star Trek First Contact. It picks up right where that film left off. Now, at the end of Star Trek First Contact, if you remember the plot for that, the Enterprise goes back in time to 2063 to stop the Borg, and at the end of the movie, they go through a time warp back presumably to the 24th century, but you don't actually see where they go. And where they actually go is to the late 1990s instead, and they meet up with the X-Men. Now, this is somewhat different than the first one. Obviously, it's the Next Generation crew and not the original series crew. And it's the X-Men are a little bit different. But Wolverine is still very much a main character in this one. Storm, who was in the first one, is also very much a main character in this one. Now, this isn't quite as good as the first one, just because when they did the first one, it was something that had never been done before, and obviously, this being the second one, they did already do it once before, so it loses some of that that novelty that the first one had. And also the art isn't nearly as good in the second one as it was in the first. The art in the first Star Trek X-Men was just outstanding. Now the villain of this one is Kang the Conqueror, and that's pretty interesting. Now, again, as with the first Star Trek X-Men crossover, the Star Trek universe is very much the future of what was then the Marvel universe at the time. And the Enterprise is full well of the Shi'ar Empire, just as the original Enterprise had been in the first one. And they, when they accidentally go back in time, they get Shi'ar equipment, Shi'ar technology readings from Xavier's mansion. And since they need that technology to get back home, they decide to steal it, since the X-Men shouldn't have it in the first place, because this is pre-First Contact with the Shi'ar Empire, as far as the Star Trek people know. As far as Federation history records, the adventures that the X-Men had with the Shi'ar are not on record. They are considered pre-First Contact with the Shi'ar Empire. So yeah, as with the first one, I mean, this is a very good story. It's very worth reading. If you're a Star Trek fan, it's worth reading. If you're an X-Men fan, it's worth reading. Like I said, the artwork is not as good, but I think the story is just a little bit better, even though it does lose that nostalgia feel. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Star Trek: The Next Generation X-Men crossover. Now, this did continue into a paperback novel called Star Trek: The Next Generation X-Men Planet X. But you don't need to read that to read the comic and to get a sense of a fulfilling story and the sense of a complete story. The Enterprise at the end goes back to the 24th century, where presumably they were meant to go in the first place after fighting with the Borg. And then there's a sort of an X-Men cliffhanger, but I mean, you can just view that as the X-Men go their own way on a new adventure, and the Enterprise goes its own way on a new adventure. You don't really have to read Planet X, and I never have gotten around to actually reading that book. So if any of my listeners have actually read the book, go ahead and leave a comment and let us know whether or not it's any good or whether it's worth reading. But that is out there. And yeah, so those are my thoughts on the Star Trek: The Next Generation X-Men crossover, and that does it for my first Trek Tuesday Superhero Sunday crossover. Thanks for listening, and have a nice day. Hi everyone. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, subscribe, follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and Make sure you head on over to TheBlaze and check out my weekly column where I do movie reviews and general Hollywood industry commentary. You can find the links for all those things in the description below. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.